like instant appropriate.
Welcome to your otaku house. Stay as long as you can, leave whenever you like. We're here to have a good time. Our subject today is one that's got debated about a lot a few years ago, and somehow I guess we're still having this debate. We're going to be talking about the big purple guy whose weakness is Ant-Man.
Yes, we are talking about Grimace.
Grimace is everyone else's weakness. That shape is killing me. Because we're here to talk about Thanos. And about how there seems to be a split on whether his plan, or not even necessarily his plan, if he was in the right or not with his thinking for the plan. Now, I'm of the mindset of most people that no, he was not right. Like, morally aside, like, his plan is dumb and makes no sense. But
Hawkeye said he was right.
As we're going into it, I think it's important that we introduce ourselves.
this is true.
This is fact.
So, fighting on the side of Thanos is wrong, I am Turtle.
Ego here, siding with that, because definitely.
Hey, I was gonna say Hawkeye said he was right, and it's your boy Kente.
We're talking about Hawkeye, who had the villain arc, who did kill multiple people, who was having his Dark Boy era. We're talking about that Hawkeye?
Yeah, we're talking about that same Hawkeye.
So we're talking about Ronan.
No, we're talking about Hawkeye because he ended up going back to the good side, did he not? He started off good. He just lived long enough to see himself become the villain, but guess what? He turned right back around.
Oh, so he was going down the Thanos route, realized it was wrong, and went back.
Oh yeah, says his mug.
His mug?
Yeah, did you not see the show?
I did see the show.
Yeah, he has a mug that says Thanos was right. And honestly, I disagree with him. I really do. Because I don't see what he did wrong outside of one. Yet, like, okay, so he was still thinking for the greater good. The one thing I still think he did wrong was killing his own daughter.
Consider the following.
Mm-hmm.
No. Number one. But also the fact is, if you have unlimited power to do unlimited things as much as you want, right? You can just make it so that there's enough resources for everybody.
Right. So we're not talking about whether his execution was wrong, because his execution was absolutely wrong. We're talking about whether his thinking was wrong. His thinking was in the right. He knew that there was not enough resources for everybody in the world.
So
his execution was wrong.
So where we're all on the same page is that he was illogical as hell, right?
Yeah, illogical, yes.
Okay.
But he was coming from a good place.
I would like to argue that he wasn't.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Because of Guardians of the Galaxy. Because of the daughter you brought up him killing. Because, did you know Gamora was the last of her race?
That couldn't be possible.
It is listed in Guardians of the Galaxy 1, the first movie, under her profile that she is the last living member of her species. And Thanos had already visited her planet, killed half the populace, so there was enough, so half the populace had the same amount of resources. They apparently, I guess, went to blows. They went to war. They started killing each other over the resources that eventually started running out anyway. But the thing is, the reason I bring all this up is that he never went back to check. Because he straight up tells Gamora in Infinity War, the people on your planet, they go to bed with full bellies. They go to bed without worrying about war, without worrying about strife. That wouldn't have happened without me. He said that to Gamora's face, and Gamora had an angry response. You might be thinking, oh, she has a problem with what he did morally. No, she came from that planet. There's no one left. They're all dead. He never bothered to go back and see if his methods actually worked. He didn't care. So this was more of an ego thing for him than anything.
Yo.
Fair. Okay. I mean, all right. Because here's my thing, right? Because in the end, though, didn't his actions actually come out for the greater good?
No, that whole species got wiped.
Oh, really? Because you're telling me that the entire time that he wiped half of Earth, right? The celestial that was inside of the planet didn't hatch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it wasn't until 5 years later when everybody came back that the egg started to start, like the Earth being, like the egg being Earth, actually started to do something about the celestial that was inside. Mm-hmm. Seems to me like he kind of saved the planet even if it was just briefly, he saved the planet.
So coincidentally?
Yeah, a glove with infinite power by Celestial.
He didn't. I don't think he knew about a celestial. Yes, it was coincidental, but that doesn't mean that good didn't happen.
But we're not talking about whether good happened or not. We're talking about, like you said, whether that was the right thing to do, which we are both of the stance. It was definitely not, and you even agree it was illogical.
The execution was illogical.
I would also like to bring up that if Thanos actually cared, he would have worded it better, or he would have thought it better. Because the Mind Stone allows him, I guess you could say, the rest of the stones to understand his intention. He didn't snap away half of sentient life across the universe. He snapped away half of life. So on the planets where organisms eat other organisms, probably a very common thing on planets that have organisms, he snapped away the organisms they feed on too. So he snapped away half the resources too.
And it doesn't necessarily say that everything is going to be snapped away equally. We know that certain populaces can be affected unequally as long as half of the universe is snapped away. There's probably outliers where, just straight up statistically speaking, a whole planet was wiped away. And why? This was unlucky. The 0.0001%. So how are we even going to talk about whether he was right for doing so or not?
And I would like to point out that we know it was half the resources as well, because when Hulk snapped everyone back, the first thing that happens to indicate that it did happen was that Ant-Man hears birds chirping outside. It was silent chirp. Which means the birds were wiped. Like, people's dogs were probably wiped. Fish in the ocean were wiped.
Well, no, we know fish in the ocean were wiped. I don't remember exactly at what point it happened, but I do know that I think it was the beginning of the Endgame movie when you can hear Cap and crap, I don't remember exactly what the situation was, but Cap was with the other guys in the room, right? When they were having the AA meeting type deal.
Yeah.
Right. Before that, there was a scene where all the boats were in the harbor and they were talking about something like that, and I think it was something on the news where the whales were dying out or something I don't remember the exact thing. It's been a minute since I
it destabilizes the environment.
But and I can understand obviously the ecosystem being affected by it. The reason why I still think he was right, again, I don't agree with his execution, but he understood that with more people comes less resources. It was just his execution that was wrong. The idea behind it was in the right place. He wanted to make sure that life still lived or life was still being sustained. It was just the method of how he acted upon it that was wrong.
But here's the greater problem. See, he's not planning for the future. The whole time, he had not planned for because at the end of the day, once the dust is settled, because even in those 5 years that it happened, it was not settled.
Sorry, dust. Anyway.
Dust? Oh!
But yes.
Damn. Rip. Anyways, in the time that happened, where so many things can change, at the end of the day, things are going to still live, and things are going to make more things. Things are going to reproduce, they're going to breed, and we're going to get to that point again. What is he going to do once that happens?
And that actually is what happened in that 5 years. That 5 years, people kept reproducing. The species that were left, it's reproduced. It caused a break in the ecosystem, and then 5 years later, when everything was brought back, those things that were lost were brought back into a world that was starting, I guess, to recover, and then...
Right.
But what I was going to say is, because you were talking about intentions, that's why I brought up earlier, so you know how the snap worked. Like what each individual stone in the gauntlet did and why he needed all 6.
No. Although, I will say this, though. I feel like the biggest error in his execution and thinking was assuming that because he wanted the resources to be enough for the life that was sustained, cutting all life was the mistake. It should have been, honestly, not that it should have been, but all sentient life.
Across each planet instead of across the universe. The difference there is that the stones then quantify the numbers based on each area that has life instead of life as a whole. Because, as Ego said, statistically speaking, there's probably entire planets that got wiped out because they just happened to be included in the half.
Right.
So, the glove, what it did was, the Space Stone allowed it to reach across the universe. But the Reality Stone allowed the dusting to happen in the first place. Right. The Power Stone powers the entire process. The Soul Stone allowed them to determine what was a living being and what wasn't. Instead of snapping away like, oh, this is a planet. I don't know, wipe it away. So I guess the Soul Stone is able to recognize that this is a living, breathing being. And those include them. The Time Stone allowed it to happen instantly.
Right.
And so, therefore, to remove all pain, unless your name is Spider-Man, who felt the entire
process, yeah.
And the Mind Stone allowed the rest of the stones to understand his intentions.
Which then, okay, at that point, then I would question whether or not. Jeez, I'm trying to make sure I'm wording this right. If the Mind Stone is allowing the other stones to make sure that they're understanding his intention, then it should have just been half of all sentient life on every planet across the universe.
That's why I'm saying. Because the Mind Stone was basing it off his intentions, and then that's what it did, Thanos never cared. He didn't think this through. Like, because had his intentions been to do this for every specific planet, blah, blah, blah. Actually, this is the conversation we were having before the podcast. Guys, he didn't plan. He didn't think about what the consequences would be. He just thought, this is my grand idea, this is what I want to have done, and this is my planning to get it done. So the Mind Stone took that and applied it to the rest of the stones. He didn't think about it, so it didn't need to. It didn't bother. Because he never did.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, we kind of know he doesn't care. Because when asked what he's going to do after, he doesn't care about the repercussions. He said he's going to look, what was it, upon a peaceful, grateful world. Right? So as long as he's content with the fact he did it at fucking all, that's all that really mattered to Thanos.
I mean, there was a cost for it, though.
The only thing he cared about, and then he was content, homie let himself get decapitated. How much did he really care?
It did still cost him Gamora. He cried. We did see a tear. He knew he didn't want to do it.
Oh man, crocodiles.
I mean, if you want to say that, I don't think that's the case.
I will say I believe his tear was genuine, but again, at the end of the day, he didn't think anything through. And even that's a point. He sacrificed the one person in the universe he actually cared about for a plan that he, to avoid cursing, half thought.
Okay. I'll give you that. That makes sense to me.
Alright, some notes from the chat. So, Buckeye Scooter says, Thanos is a bad guy, but he wasn't wrong. And then Bass_EXE says, I think a lot of the argument also stems from utilitarianism or virtue level ethics. Thanos could be argued that he was trying to do what benefited the greater good at the cost of half, but the majority would be spared. It's flawed logic and utilitarianism often doesn't work, but it's still there. Virtue ethics says to do what is right regardless, aka the Avengers principle. It's an interesting concept for sure.
So the chat agrees with me essentially, or at least understands that he was right.
No, apparently my uncle agrees with you. And Cornell, who is base_EXE, guys said he believes that Thanos is following the logic of that type of rule, of that type of morality, right. But he says that morality is flawed at its base.
Right. Okay.
And again, I am arguing that Thanos did not care, at least enough to put any thought into the plan. He didn't care enough to do it himself until after Age of Ultron.
He did do it. He was doing it himself. When we saw the flashback of him on Gamora's planet, he had his people doing it. He was part of the process himself. The only issue was that it wasn't quick enough. So that's the reason why he wanted to get the stones. Because like you said, like the Time Stone made sure it happened all simultaneously. I think the one thing I would definitely agree with you was like how you dictated what each stone did, and then like honestly, I would just reword that the Reality Stone just basically was a submit button. But like everything else, yes, was on point. I think the idea behind what he really wanted to do was to just make sure that, yes, unfortunately at the cost of a few lives, the many do prosper.
Yeah, that's the utilitarian
moral. Right, with the whole, like the trade tracks idea. With, like, I know what you're talking about, and yeah. I just, like I said, I do think he was coming from a good place. He was trying to come from a right place. His execution was piss poor. But nonetheless, I think that it's probably not to my credit, but the only reason why I think he was wrong is simply because in the What If episode, when Star-Lord T'Challa said that he was wrong, but he was still in favor of the idea himself. So that's why I'm just like, it makes sense. It's just, I think it's just a way of going about it.
Well, if we want to talk about utilitarianism, I think it should be understood that Thanos was looking at an extreme form of impersonal utilitarianism, right?
Okay.
It's taking something to its logical conclusion and then pushing it a little further than that, right? So I kind of want to know, if you think that he was in the right about it, what would you have changed that would have made it perfect? See, I need to push that, because if he's so right, then I'm going to have to assume you're the kind of person who would snap.
So,
and if you're the kind of person that would snap, I need to know, what's your justification for just offing a majority of people in existence?
You're definitely not thinking I'm the villain for this, and you know what? Fair.
I'm just saying, Triforce of Power.
Alright, so hear me out. What I think would have made it perfect.
Oh, you're already dead.
Oh yeah,
Samurai style, it just happened.
I don't care. It would have been okay. It would have been possibly across the universe, people over a certain age, right, and then actually cutting off sentient life, not just all life, because I think at least all of us can agree that like plants are living things,
Yeah.
right? Like obviously sea creatures are living things. These are living like things. So I would say like sentient in the same way that like just human, right? I would say human in the DBZ term, human, because they actually denoted that certain life forms were mortal and actually called them humans, even though they didn't look like us in that sense.
Effectively people.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would do people over a certain age and then actually doubling the resources that he said he wanted to save.
Okay,
Or
so
not even just doubling, but just making sure that it was more easily multiplied.
I like hearing your whole reasoning behind it, but now I need to go push you further again, because this is all relevant.
Okay.
Do you think it was moral? Do you think not only that his thinking was in the right place, do you think he was a good person for doing that?
Not for how he did it.
Not for how he did it, but if he was doing it your way, you would call him a good person?
Yes.
You would say that wiping out half of the... So I'm gonna pull out an argument that chat might not like, that the internet knows very well. We're gonna push it to Nazis.
Yeah.
Alright?
Oh, shit.
And you're gonna get in hot water because you know the more we push it,
Okay.
the harder it gets to defend.
Right.
So, Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
He did believe that what he was doing was right and would fix the world.
Right.
Or at least his society. What makes you think that this idea that Thanos had that did effectively cause genocide, and we know through Gamora did cause genocide, what makes you think that that's good? Are you saying that genocide is good? I'm using your own logic, and I'm just pushing it.
Genocide isn't good. I'm not even gonna entertain
Chat.
the idea.
Kente
Genocide
does say
isn't good.
genocide is bad.
Genocide, yeah, let's be real here. Genocide is
It needs
not
to
good
be said.
whatsoever, right? So, okay, I am gonna say something that is probably gonna get myself into some hot water, right? I hope this doesn't cancel us.
Just cancel him.
If it's gonna cancel anybody, cancel me. But okay,
We're still homies, but
yeah, we're
saying.
still gonna be okay. So okay. Don't get me wrong, I still didn't like the idea, but if it was a way to, if it was me, if I was Thanos in this situation, obviously COVID wouldn't have hurt everybody the way it did. Like, there wouldn't have been, honestly, no lives would have been lost, right? But it did happen, right? We can't change the past. If I could, it possibly would have been people over a specific age. And that still makes me look like and feel like the bad guy, because I know that includes people I love and care about as well, right? I only say that because I believe don't quote me because I really don't remember. And if you do know, chat, or if you guys just correct me. But I'm pretty sure it was like a Roman emperor or some Roman philosopher who said that in order for growth to continue for the young, the old has to pass away. And that's the only reason why I believe that. Because if people over a certain age was to pass, especially here in the United States, granted, yes, there's people who are young who agree with that sentiment, or the older sentiment would probably still keep those ideas alive. I feel like those who don't agree with them outnumber them. And that's the only reason why I feel like had they passed, we probably would have been in a slightly better-ish place. I just
like to say I don't want the old people to be in charge. That's just where I'm at. Those people over a certain age, I'm pretty sure we know the age. I just want them to stop being in charge.
I mean, yeah, honestly, I don't want them to be in charge either. Ideally, I wouldn't kill them. I just don't want them to be in charge.
Right. I think personally, I mean, I don't know the quote off the top of my head. I have heard something similar. Right. But what I think is probably key is that the old live and continue for the purpose of making sure that the next generation is led in the right direction.
Yeah, or at least doesn't repeat the same mistakes that they made.
So they're there, and we are here as we're aging and growing older to make sure that the following generation will be better than us.
Right.
Right? So, to that extent, would you say that killing off the old people would still be a good idea? Because, I mean, you are, again, talking about people's loved ones and people who could still help.
Right, and don't get me wrong, yeah, I genuinely wouldn't want to, right? Mm-hmm. But, like, if that was something where we could, like, if there was something that was, and I don't even say it was possible because I wouldn't wish that on my people also, because, like I said, that includes some people I know and love. But I feel like it could be geared in a way to, like, they should have less responsibility on what happens towards the future generation.
I do apologize. I do like where this conversation is going. I want to go back to the Thanos thing real quick. I want to go back to the whole Gamora thing real quick. I want to go back to her entire species being wiped out. Him personally wiping out the last member of it. I want to go back to that because, again, he enacted that plan and then didn't stay to see it through. In my mind, that means he didn't care. Kelly. Kente. If you have a job at work and you need to spread out who does what task, do you leave a task to somebody and then never check to see if they did it?
No, because I'm the assistant manager. I actually have to double check to make sure they did it
correctly.
Correct.
You are in charge. So if you delegated a task to somebody, would you leave without checking to see if that task was done?
No.
Cool. That's what Thanos did repeatedly. He did that on Gamora's planet. Guys, they wiped out half this planet.
So what that just tells me is that he has no managerial skills.
So what this tells us is that not only was he wrong from a logical perspective, you yourself are agreeing with us that he was immoral and he was just plain stupid.
Because again, if he had actually cared about this plan that he thought was good, he would have stayed and saw it through. He didn't. He didn't even leave anyone to see it through. He just bounced. He's like, yo, half the people dead? Gucci, bye. And he left. And then the rest of them got wiped out. He didn't care. He never found out. He never went back and checked. They all died and he didn't care. He left full well thinking, yeah, I did a good thing today.
He said today was a good day.
He wiped out half the universe, and like Ego said earlier, he never bothered to go and check to see what the results were. Okay. He wiped out half the universe, and he's like, then I'm going to go start a farm and eat this weird pineapple-looking fruit.
That's exactly what he did. Okay, yeah.
Because he didn't care about the results. He didn't think about the plan beyond completing the plan.
Because my thing is that, like, okay, for me, it's a matter of, like, if we can't necessarily change how he did what he did, or no, we can't change the fact that he did it, can we change how he did it, right? If I could change how he did it, then yes, I would change it a different way. I mean, obviously, ideally, it wouldn't have happened at all. Or at least, if ideally, I would have just made sure that, like I said, the resources were more easily replicatable. Like, you could just
accessible.
Accessible. You know what I'm saying? So that there would be no loss of life because of a lack of resources.
So I hear you, and I just want to make sure that we're so clear on this.
Okay.
So, trying to get us to an endpoint.
Right.
I think that means we can all agree as part of this episode, from what we started,
Right.
that Thanos was wrong.
Also, I would just like to point out, if Thanos had snapped and said, I want to remove all the evil people in the universe, I would still be against it. Just
Okay, that man.
Oh, I mean, just straight up, because that comes down to who he believes is morally good and who is morally evil.
Reminder, the people who he was fighting could have been seen as evil to him. Thanos, in his mind, was his own hero. And that's the problem with no offense, people who see Thanos as right. Because then it comes down to, if you were to be in a similar position, would you make the same decisions? And that's scary for a lot of people.
That's true. And I agree with you, and I wouldn't make the same decisions. And I know that's to be true. But, like, the Celestials, who are supposed to be way more wiser and obviously older than us, say he was right. Hawkeye agrees with what he did. I can only imagine that there's more people in the Marvel universe who believe that Thanos was right. Probably some of them who were blipped themselves.
Well, actually, if you want to go into that real quick, the Celestials did not agree with Thanos. In fact, in that lore, Thanos was anti-Celestial. The Celestials were against what Thanos did because in the process of him doing it, like you brought up earlier, the new Celestial that was supposed to be born was prevented from being born.
Sorry,
and
the
also,
Celestials, yes, but the Eternals say that he was.
We are extremely and acutely aware of the fact that not only Celestials didn't agree with that, or rather, Thanos and them didn't agree, but we also know that Celestials are fallible because of the Eternals movie.
That's true. I give you that. That's
right?
Yeah.
So, trying to say that we should trust them even still falls kind of flat. I'm just saying, I don't know if we want to end here, but I think here is a good point for us to put our foot in the sand, draw our line, and go, that's just not it.
It's bad.
Genocide is bad, Chad. I just think that's very
for all
important.
intents and purposes and all.
No. We can't be putting little asterisks.
No, it's just
Genocide is bad.
This is. Well, yeah, just
Three words.
What you're saying.
You said intents and purposes. I'm just saying.
Yeah. No,
Thanos was wrong. Genocide is bad. Hitler is bad. You know, just following along.
Right. All right.
All right.
I knew that. Like I said, the What If episode was made me small. It's like, yeah, he's wrong.
Sometimes the most powerful weapon you can have is a good argument.
This has been Otaku House.
Yep, and we otaku'd out.
Ego.
Can't say.
Turtle.
Follow us on all socials.
Absolutely.
We will have those soon.
We'll see you till next time.
I have socials. I have an X, for whatever reason it's called that, and an IG.
I'm not calling it X.
Twitter, yeah.
Otaku House will have socials soon.
Yeah, that part.
All right. Until then.
Toku
We're out. Ego out.